Hello and welcome to CyberWick IT. We are going to be configuring a DHCP relay on a few different VLANs today using a Windows Server for DHCP, and a Sophos Firewall is going to be doing our L3 routing between those different VLANs. Uh, Please like and subscribe if you can. It really helps my channel grow, and I'm really looking forward to making more content. And any likes or comments or any feedback that I can get is definitely going to help uh, with the channel growing and reaching more people. So without further ado, let's get into the objectives that are going to be covered by this. Basically, Cisco L2 IOSV is what we're going to be using for our switch configuration in GNS3, and then we're going to be doing some basic like VLAN configuration and trunk configuration on that switch. And our Sophos Firewall is going to be being used for our L3 routing, and that's also going to have our DHCP relay agents on each interface to signal back to that DHCP server VLAN where the DHCP server is. And then our actual DHCP server is going to be a Windows server that's going to have the DHCP service installed with the scope set up. And then at the end of it, we're going to check and see, as long as we have inter VLAN routing and we have the correct IP address scheme polling for the correct VLAN configuration on the switch, then we're going to basically wrap it up after that. So to get into it a little bit more, just to kind of go over why you would set it up this way. Basically, why you would have a single DHCP server instead of having one on every single network would just basically be because of less overhead management. Only having one server for all your different scopes and subnets is going to be a lot easier to manage than if you had 10 or 20 different servers trying to serve 10 or 20 different networks. It's going to basically help you also have uniformity in configuration, because if you have a lot more servers, unless you're using something to control the configuration creep on it, things tend to be different, even in the same environment if you have multiples. So basically having one server that has one set of policies that is going to be uniform between all your different subnets is really good, especially if you're telling all the clients in your network what DNS settings to have, where their gateway is, and so on and so forth. It's also going to help reduce maintenance for like troubleshooting different updates, patches that may need to be applied, and different things like that. It's also going to help if you're adding a new subnet or a new DHCP scope. It's going to be easier to just configure that on one server than on many. And you don't need to spin up additional DHCP servers every single time that you want to add maybe a new network or a new subnet, or maybe a reconfiguration. It's just easier to log onto the one server and do that. These are going to be basically what we're going to be setting up today. Our default VLAN, VLAN 1, it's going to be subnet 10.0.1.0. Everything's going to be in a /24 network, and this is going to be our naming convention. Same with VLAN 10, 20, and 30. 10.0.10.0, 10.0.20, 10.0.30, so on and so forth. And this is just an overview of the DHCP DORA process, which is the Discover, Offer, Request, and Acknowledgement. And essentially, just a quick recap of how DHCP works so we can get a better understanding is when a client connects to a network, it's going to, if it doesn't have a static IP set, it's going to send a Discover message, and it's going to say, is there a DHCP server on this network? Because it's going to send a Discover broadcast to IPv4 broadcast network ID, or IP address, all 255s, same with IPv6. And the MAC address for that Ethernet is going to be all Fs, and it's going to basically try and reach out and broadcast and find a DHCP server. If it does find one, the DHCP server is going to respond with an offer that basically has an IP for the client and other information, like your DNS servers, default gateways, and other DHCP options, if configured. Once that's offered to the client is then going to request to actually take that address that was offered, and typically it's like a first come first serve. So, if say there were multiple DHCP servers, the client is going to typically respond to the first one received. So the client's then going to select that IP address, request it from the server, let the server know that it's going to accept it, and any other configuration details that it may need. And then the server is going to basically send an acknowledgement saying like, okay, you can have that address. That one's yours. So it'll send an ACK, and then it'll confirm the lease and any other details that may be associated with that DHCP scope. So moving on. Basically, this is just products like we're going to be using today. We're going to be using Windows Server for the DHCP server, and a few other things. We're going to be using Windows 10 for clients, Linux, Ubuntu for clients. We're going to be using a Sophos XG Firewall Home Edition for our L3 gateway, and to also help provide routing and set up the DHCP relays in each interface, VLAN interface. For our switch, it's going to be Cisco L2 IOSV, and GNS3 is the platform we're using to emulate all of this. Okay, so now that we are logged on to our firewall in our environment, basically what we're doing now is we're just setting up some very basic things, because there's really nothing configured in this. I just installed it and named it, and really some very other basic things. So there was really no configuration done on this. So I've already done this for VLAN 10 and VLAN 20, and looking at our handy XLS sheet, basically showing the different networks we're going to have. So we're going to have 10.0.1.0, which is that VLAN 1. We're going to have that .10 and that .20, and then that .30. So you can see this is a client's VLAN, that's a server's VLAN, and then that's going to be our admin VLAN. So I've already added 10, 20, and then I just need to add 30. So we're going to go ahead and do that right now so I can show you how it's done. Basically, you'll go over to host and service, and then you're going to click add. And then we're going to name this VLAN, if I can spell, 30, and that's going to be admin. So we're going to select IPv4, we're going to select network, and then this will be 10.0.30.0, and then that's going to be another /24, and we're going to hit save, and that should show up on our list. So we have VLAN 10, 20, and 30. And basically these are network address objects, so then when we go to reference them for routing later, we don't have to create them at that point. So we got 10, 20, 30, just to compare back here. This is our default, so we have VLAN 10, 20, and 30. Okay, so now that we basically have the networks configured on the actual firewall, we're going to go into the actual DHCP Windows server, we're going to sign into this, and then we're going to actually create those DHCP scopes. And then same thing with this. This was just a fresh OS install, and then the only other thing that was done was I installed the DHCP service as a role on this server. So nothing else configured. Okay, and then let's see what our IP address is. So we have a 10.0.1.26. So this shows that we are still in VLAN 1. Even though when we look back at this, it's saying that we are going to set up our DHCP server in the server's VLAN, which is 10.0.20.0, and we're going to actually statically set that IP address as 10.0.20.2. So let's go ahead and we'll set our IP address statically for this server, and then we'll create a scope for 10.0.10.20 and then .30, and then we'll have the lease range start at 25 to 254 for each one, with each exclusion from 1 to 24. So we're going to set up the client scope. That is going to be 10.0.10.1 through 10.0.10.2. accidentally hit an extra button. 10.0.10.254. So we'll set the actual subnet for this scope. It's going to be a /24. I'm going to go next. So this is going to be the exclusions. So that will be our 10.0.10.25 to 2, or excuse me, sorry, that's from 10.0.1 to 24. So that's what we're going to set for our exclusion range. So 10.0.10.1, 10.0.10.24. So we're going to add that. We're going to hit next. We'll just take the defaults on that for 8 days. Yeah, we want to configure DHCP options such as like DNS and default gateway. So we're going to go ahead and put in our router ID, which we're going to use .1 for each VLAN interface. So for the VLAN 10, it would be 10.0.10.1, and that's going to be our default gateway for VLAN 10, which is our client's VLAN. Then for DNS servers, we'll have our default gateway, and then we'll just use, how about 1.1.1.1. We'll just add that. And then we'll also add 8.8.8.8. How about that? And then we'll bring the default gateway down to the bottom. And then if we don't need a Win server, I want to activate the scope, make it live, and hit finish. So now we're going to go back through and we're going to do that exact same thing for the rest of these scopes. So we're going to go new scope. We're going to be, this is going to be the 10.0.20.0, so we're going to call this the servers. 10.0.20.1, 10.0.20.254, and this is going to be another 24. Oh, it doesn't like me, so we'll just do it by clicking /24. Start IP for the exclusion 10.0.20.1 through 10.0.20.24, which is what we have listed in our exclusion range for the servers, and again that's going to be the same for the admin, 1 to 24. So we'll hit add and then next. We'll accept the defaults again. Yes, I want to configure the DHCP options. Same thing for this server's VLAN as it was for VLAN 10, 10.0.20.1, because we're using .1 for the gateway of every interface. And we're going to hit add. We're going to add 1.1.1.1. And then we're going to add 8.8.8.8. And we're going to move this down. Next. I don't need a Win server. Activate the scope. Okay, and that is live too. And then we're going to do one more scope. Okay, we're going to hit next. Don't need wins, and we're going to activate that. So that's essentially the setup that you need to do on the actual DHCP server to get your different scopes set up and then get them live. So here we can view them. We can see that scope 10.0.10.0, 20.0, and 30.0 are live. So we don't have a scope for our default VLAN. And I'm probably not going to create one just for this demonstration because we're not going to have anything in the default VLAN when we're done. Looking back, basically we're going to have all of our clients, our DHCP server, our faux print server, and then all of our other admin machines are going to either be in one of those three VLANs, either 10, 20, or 30. So I'm not going to worry about that too much. So then let's go ahead. We've got that taken care of. Let's go ahead and go back, and we're going to statically assign the IP address of this. So that way we have that. And what is that IP address again? So we decided on 10.0.20.2 because 10.0.1 slash through 24 is out of that exclusion zone. So we can use that. So we can use the .2 for that VLAN. Properties. 10.0.20.2 subnet mask 255 default gateway will be 10.0.20.1 like we had talked about using. .1 for all the VLAN interfaces. And for our preferred DNS, we will do 1.1.1.1. We will do 8.8.8.8. And then we will also add 10.0.20.1. If I can stop hitting the wrong button. And then we're going to say OK, and then we're going to say OK. And we're probably going to see a disconnection here just because we haven't created the actual DHCP relay and scope and everything on the firewall. So we're moving it out of a network that technically we don't have routing or anything set up for yet. So it will probably disconnect. Let's just go back in and check and make sure that it actually took those settings because sometimes it doesn't. Okay. 20.2. All right, so that's how it should be. Okay, so then now what we're going to do is we're going to go to the firewall, and then we're going to start working on the settings there. Okay, so to recap, we've got our DHCP scope set up, we've got our different networks set up here, and then we're going to go into the network tab. Okay, so now we'll go to DHCP. And you can see we basically have our default DHCP, which is up until this point has been handing out IP addresses for all of the connected devices in the actual lab. But we're going to actually disable that, delete it, and then we're going to set up our DHCP relay on each interface, and we're going to get rid of the DHCP server on the actual firewall. So let's go back to here. So we're going to go ahead and disable that. Disable that one as well because we don't really need that. And then for our relays, we will set those up, but we need to set up the actual interfaces first. So we're going to go back to the interfaces tab now that we've turned off the DHCP server service that's on the firewall. We'll go back to VLAN, and we'll go ahead and hit add interface. And we're going to add a VLAN interface. So this is basically going to be like a router on a stick. So we're going to go VLAN 10 clients. We're going to go interface. It's going to be tied to port 1, which is our physical interface. The VLAN ID is going to be 10. This is going to be our static assignment. So it'll be 10.0.10.1 of our interface ID. And then we don't need anything else, so we'll go ahead and hit save. Let that load for a second. Then we'll basically do the same thing for the servers and the admin VLAN, which is .20 and .30. So we'll go back and do that again. VLAN 20, servers, base part 1. And I like to name stuff and follow the subnet just because it makes it easier to figure out what's going on and where you're at. This may not always be scalable in an enterprise environment, so just something to keep in mind. But for our purposes, it's totally fine. 20.1. So that's the actual interface IP, and we're gonna go ahead and hit save. Okay, so now we have our 3 VLAN interfaces that are tied to our physical interface. That's going to give us that L3 routing. We've got VLAN 10, 20, and 30 with the associated subnet of .10, .20, .30, all having the .1 actual interface IP address for those virtual interfaces. So now we're going to go back to DHCP, and then we're going to actually set up those relays. So for the relay, I'm going to add a relay, and we're going to call this DHCP server 4.10. So IPv4, the interface is going to be for the actual .10 interface, which is VLAN 10. So basically what this is doing is this is a relay inside this network, this virtual network that we're creating, that basically is going to say that any DHCP messages or broadcasts that come in are basically going to get forwarded to this server that I'm about to type in. So it'd be 10.0.20.2. And that is this right here. So basically what's happening is inside this VLAN right here, we're basically saying, hey, anything inside this VLAN that you get a DHCP offer or discover, or any other messages, forward it to this server. This is what's going to be giving away those IP addresses. So then you're going to go ahead and hit save. Oops, didn't add it. There we go. And then we're going to hit save. DHCP server. We're going to add one for the .30 and 10.0.20.2, which is again the actual DHCP server's IP address. So then we're going to hit save. And we should be set. And you're probably wondering why. Actually, I want to edit the name on that. If it will let me. Okay, so it actually won't let me edit it. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to delete this and rename it so it's got that same naming convention of the .20 at the end, or sorry, .30. You're probably wondering why we don't set one up for the server's VLAN, and that's because the DHCP server actually exists inside that VLAN. So there's no need for having like a DHCP relay anywhere, because basically inside that 10.0.20.network, any DHCP discovers that come on that network is going to be answered by the server that's already on that network. So there's nowhere to relay it to because those clients are already there. So .30, selecting the interface for the admin. 10.0.20.2, and then we'll hit save. Oops. Okay, so we've got our relay set up for the .10 and the .30. Okay, so now we just need to set up our switch. Okay, and also same thing on this. There's been no configuration done, so I'll just do some basic things just for fun. Give it a name. That, and then we'll go line console 0. And basically what I'm doing right now is I'm basically just setting the timeout, so that way if we start looking at something else, I don't come back, the switch is logged out, it's just right where I left it. It's just something I typically do with every single one. Exec timeout, that's what I'm looking for. Timeout, and we'll set that, let's just set that to 90 minutes. That should be more than enough time. Alright, so let's go back and then we're going to look and see what our interfaces are. Okay, so this is on G00. So basically this is going to need to be configured as a trunk because different VLANs are going to be passing this. So this will be a trunk interface. So we'll go ahead and configure that now, which is G00. Okay, so actually before we do that, we'll create the VLANs. So we'll go VLAN 10 and name clients. And then we'll go exit VLAN 20 name servers. Then we'll go VLAN 30. And then we'll go name. And then after that, we'll go exit. We'll go see what they say. Okay, so now we have our three VLANs. We've got our client's VLAN, our server's VLAN, and our admin VLAN, which is 10, 20, and 30. And those are the ones from earlier, we configured on the firewall, they correlate to the .10, .20, and .30, just to keep things simple. So like we said earlier, our G00 interface is going to be that trunk. So I'm going to go ahead and move to that interface, G0/0. So now we're going to configure G00 as a trunk. So we'll go that's right, you have to do the encapsulation command first. Okay, so now if we go, I'll take, wait here just a second. So now if we go do show sometimes it takes me a second to remember the exact syntax. So basically, now if you do this command, do show interfaces trunk, shortened version, so we can see that G00 is the only trunk interface we have right now, with the mode on. The encapsulation is 802.1q. It's trunking, the native VLAN is still 1. So now what we're going to do is we're going to basically, kind of as like an extra security feature, we're only going to allow these. So basically right now we have all of these VLANs allowed on the trunk, and basically we just want the default VLAN 10, 20, and 30. So we'll go so we'll go 1, 10, 20, 30, and then we'll check. See, now you can see that we don't have, 1 through 4094. We only have 1, 10, 20, and 30 allowed on the actual trunk, G00, and these are the ones also allowed in the management domain. So now that we have that set up, I'm going to go ahead and just do a quick write to memory, just in case. So those changes have been saved. So now that we have the trunk interface configured to carry that past VLAN traffic, now we can start configuring these different. We can configure these different links. So we can configure this in VLAN 20. We can configure this client in VLAN 30 because this is going to be an admin. This will also be an admin. And then we'll configure this, as even though it's a server, we'll configure it in VLAN 10 as a client. So we'll go ahead and go back to the switch and make those changes. So we'll go to global config mode, we'll go to interface. G02 is the actual DHCP server, so we'll go G0/2. Switch port. VLAN 20. Basically, so this is basically putting the actual port on the switch in VLAN 20. So if you go do show run, and we'll pipe that out to only show the interfaces section of the run, you can see that G02 is actually in VLAN 20 now, which is that 10.0, that 10.0.20.2 address. So now we'll go interface G01, G0/1. Go VLAN 30. Set as our admin VLAN. Yes. And then go back to G0. G10. So now we're going to go to interface G1/0. We're going to go switch port access VLAN 30. Okay, so now we have those configured, and then for our actual client, we're going to put G03 in VLAN 10. Interface G0/3. We're going to go switch port VLAN 10. And then if we go to write that, just to save those changes to be safe, and we'll go show VLAN brief command, which is going to show the different VLANs and all the ports that are configured in them. So we see that in the client's VLAN is only G03, which is connected to this client/server G03, and then we have G10, which is in VLAN 30, as well as G01, which is this, also an admin machine. And then for G02, you can see that that's in the server's VLAN for VLAN 20, and for G03, which was this one we already looked at. Okay, so that's everything. We've got all our configurations on the switch setup. So basically what we need to do is go ahead and see if we're up and running. So if I go log into this, we'll see what the IP address of this is currently. So we're still in the default VLAN. So basically what we'll do is we'll do an IP config renew and see if we can pull the correct IP address now that we're in a different VLAN. So we'll do the release first and then the renew. Okay. See, now you can see that because we moved this over to VLAN 1, or sorry, VLAN 10, it's now in the .10 network. So now our IPv4 address is 10.0.10.25, which is the very first address outside of that scope we created on the DHCP server. And you can also see that the default gateway is actually changed too as well to the VLAN 10 interface. So you can go ahead and see what it was before when I first ran this command. It was 10.0.1 for being in that default native VLAN, having a /27 address because there were a few other ones that also were in this network. So you can also see the default gateway changed as well. Instead of being 10.0.1.1, the native VLAN default gateway, you can see it's now in that .10 SVI, 10.0.10.1. So now if we go to our DHCP server and check that out, let's see if we can see the scope or see the actual lease. So now if we go to address leases, now we can see that that Windows 10 client is actually on the lease on the DHCP server, so you can actually view and see that it picked that up, which is exactly what we were trying to do. Having a centrally managed DHCP server for the 3 different networks that we created that is being routed by this. So let's go ahead and we'll go to another machine. So let's go to this client and we'll do the same thing and we'll see if it picks up the correct address. So we can see that that's still in that native VLAN like the last machine, 10.0.1.2, with the same native VLAN default gateway. So let's go ipconfig/release. something up with this. Let's go ahead and check out the adapter and see if we just need to disable it and re-enable it. Sometimes that's what it takes. So now let's go ahead and re-enable it and see if it picks up the correct IP address. Let's go back and check our settings. And that was for G01. G01 is in the admin, so it should be picking up a .30. Let's go and see. I may still have an static address set on this from setting up the firewall, so let's see if that's the problem. I may not have it set to DHCP. Yeah, that's the problem. So once we set it back to actually setting DHCP, it should reach out and start picking up the correct address. Let's see if it does it. Or I should say an address from the correct network. And now we can see that the issue has been resolved. So let's go ahead and we'll run another IP config and see if it's in the .30 network. And there we have it, 10.0.30.25. Same thing as the last one. This is the first usable address in that DHCP scope. And you can see the .30 SVI. .1 is that gateway. So let's go ahead and check our DHCP server again and see if it has the lease for that. So if we go to the .30, go to the address leases, and you can see it here that it is in fact inside that lease pool. And let's go to our .20. And then just for fun, we're going to actually, let's see. Just for fun, I think I'm going to change either this machine or the next one over to the .20 VLAN, the servers, just to show you that, you know, without a relay, like I was talking about earlier in that VLAN, that it's still going to work because it's going to answer up DHCP messages from its own network. So this one seems to be freezing, so I'm not going to worry about it. So basically I'm going to go onto the switch, and then I'm going to change this interface over to the same network, that VLAN 20, as the servers. So that's G03, and we can see here that G03 is in the clients. So let's go ahead and go to global config. Interface G0/3, and then we're going to go to switchboard access VLAN 20, and then we're going to pull up the VLAN list, and you're going to see that G03 is now in the servers VLAN, which is connected to this. So if we go back to this machine, and when we looked at it earlier, it was in, you know, the client's VLAN, which was in .10. So now that we changed the virtual network on the switch, it should pull a .10.0.20.25 instead of 10.0.10.25. So let's go ahead and test that. Yep, and there it is, 10.0.20.25. So 10.0.20.1, so that has now moved over to the .20 network. And then we're going to go back to our firewall. And we're going to look and see if we can ping something We'll just start with Google, just to show we have connectivity out. Okay, so you can see that we can get out from our local network. But let's see, can we ping the DHCP server? Oops, don't want that. Man, I cannot type today. So we can't ping the server, and that's because we don't have routing set up between the VLANs. And typically with Windows host machines, you actually need to make an exception in the firewall to actually make that happen a lot of the time. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to set that up here under firewall policies, and we're going to set up a rule for it. Because if we look, basically we just have a default network policy which just allows outbound connections. We don't have any inner VLAN routing. So we'll set that up real quick just to show. If this GUI will load. So you can see there's no rules for traffic to internal zones. Traffic to WAN, no rules. Traffic to DMZ, no rules. We just have the auto-added policies as well as a default network policy, which lets anything out from the local area network, to any host out on the internet. So basically we need to create a rule. So we'll go new firewall rule, and we'll go from VLAN 30, which is what this machine is, to VLAN 20, which is where the DHCP server is. We'll call it VLAN 30 to 20 to keep it simple. Rule position, we'll put that at the top. So you typically always want to have your most explicit policies at the top. We'll log that firewall traffic, we'll accept the traffic, if it'll let me click it. Rule group automatic, so the source zone will be the LAN. Apply that. Source network, we're going to get rid of the any, and that's going to be our VLAN network, which is from all types. We're going to make that search by network, and then we will add that VLAN 30 as the source. During all the time, the destination zone is going to be that VLAN 20, which is in the LAN zone. We'll go ahead and get rid of the any. We'll add a new item. We'll scroll all the way up to the top. And then instead of by searching by all types, we'll search by network. And destination of VLAN 20. Services any, which is fine for now. Normally we would scope that down a little bit. We'll just leave all the security policies off, and then we'll hit save. And then we'll go ahead and create one the other way, which will allow traffic from VLAN 20 to VLAN 30. So let's go ahead and (20 to 30). We'll position, go with the top, accept traffic, go ahead and log it. Source zone again is going to be the LAN. Go ahead and apply that. Source network, we're going to get rid of any. Go ahead and add a new item. We'll go back down to, or go all the way up, and then we'll search by network again. And then the source network is going to be VLAN 20. And the destination zone is again going to be LAN. And then the destination network is going to be VLAN 30. Go to network. And then uncheck any. And the destination network will be VLAN 30. Leave services as any and then hit save. Okay, so we have the routing between VLAN 20 and VLAN 30 set up. And then that's under auto added to traffic to internal zones. So you can see VLAN 20 to VLAN 30 and then VLAN 30 to VLAN 20, vice versa. And you can see that in here. So basically we'll test that out. And it may not work the first time, just because like I said earlier with Windows Firewall. So if it doesn't, we'll disable that and then I'll show you that you can in fact do that. So before we do that ping though, I'll just do an IP config. So you can see that we're 10.0.30.25. So we're in a different network. So we're going to ping 10.0 to 20.2, which is the IP address of the DHCP server. Yep. So it looks like that's failing. So then we'll go ahead and cancel that out. And then I will go to Windows Defender Firewall. And then we'll just go ahead and turn it off. And safe to do because we're in a lab. Wouldn't normally do this, but just for purely educational purposes. So do that, and then we'll go over to the DHCP server and do the exact same thing. So we'll go ahead and turn that off, off, off. Hit OK. Now we'll go back to our Windows 10 box and we'll try that again. Okay, so now we're back. Then we'll try that ping one more time. And now we can see success, it's working. And we will try and ping from the DHCP server to the Windows box in that other VLAN, just to show we have communication both ways. 10.0.30.25. And voila. Sometimes the first one or two fail or timeout. But we can see we have connectivity both ways. And that is basically it, guys. If you guys have any other questions or have anything to add, go ahead and please leave a comment on the video. Please like and subscribe, and I appreciate you for watching. Thank you.